The desert provides unique growing challenges because of the heat and shortage of water. But as we've learned in the desert video series, you can turn these challenges into opportunities. Today, you will learn what can you grow in the desert and how you can irrigate your crops the most efficient way. So let's start by briefly considering this site. It's a fairly flat land with very mild slope from east to west. The strongest winds come from the west, and there is also a road on the west. When it comes to growing food in the desert, you shouldn't create field of crop or a food forest in an unsheltered area, as you will have an evaporation increase in an open field. Windbreaks should be grown on swales and wastewater, and they should serve as many functions as possible, such as forage, shelter to protect crops, especially tall crops such as corn, mulch through clippings and leaf fall, and animal exclusion to help keep browsing animals out of the garden. Additionally, the species should be highly adaptive and drought tolerant, such as acacias, casuarina, prosopis, lucina, albizia, coprosma, Roman cypress, olive, tall tamarisk, white cedar, giant bamboo, stone and desert pines, and desert oaks. If you need to exclude livestock, cacti and euphorbia and thorny shrubs will help you do that. And don't worry, you don't have to take notes of species, as you can get the complete list for desert climate by clicking the link in the description. If you have a smaller plot and planting a windbreak, a good idea is to create a root barrier of plastic buried 1 meter deep between the garden and windbreak to minimize water competition. For garden hedges, you can use rosemary, lavender, sunflower, Jerusalem artichoke, crotalaria. A fast and temporary garden hedge could consist of banana grass planted on furrow, but bear in mind that it needs irrigation. And on fences, you can use fleshy vines like micania and dolichos. If you have a larger piece of land, then you can create windbreaks on swales every 30 to 60 meters around the cultivated field. And the species you might want to include are palms, prosopis, acacia, casuarina, and banksia. You should also note that the roads should be positioned to cross the wind and planted with windbreaks. Other species that are especially useful for mulch and shade trees are mulga, tamarisk, desert oaks, casuarinas, tall cultivated bamboo, paulownia, acacia, albida, and lucina. Now let's move on to a food forest. You should apply at least these two strategies to enhance your success. 1. Establish self-shading successions, and 2. Rely on edible tree species that thrive in dry climates. Space trees further apart than in temperate zones to reduce water competition, and plant them during the rainy season. Mulch the trees and interplant leguminous species in between. Implement chop and drop mulching after rain events. Examples of tree guilds to consider is high palm canopy consisting of date palm. Then you can have productive understory trees such as mulberry, tamarind, carob, olive, fig, apricot, citrus. If the climate allows, include avocado, banana, papaya, guava, pawpaw, and mango. Legume trees, albizia, lucina, acacia, and prosopis. As a mulch, you can use palm leaves or brush, or you can use rocks to protect tree roots from heat and damage while acting as thermal mass to keep roots warm at night and to gather condensation. Regarding food forest irrigation, we've learned some water harvesting techniques in the wider landscape, and by now you know that you can divert flood or storm water to swales, which is the most efficient way to irrigate trees. You can also divert grey water and other rainwater runoffs into swales to feed the trees. For this, and subject to permissions from local authorities, you can use domestic wastewater channels, which convey water filtered by reed beds. They can be made out of sheet of plastic laid 30 cm below the soil surface and about 60 cm wide. No root crops is planted above plastic, and the slotted pipe can be used to carry wastewater along the plastic base of the garden beds. The other very efficient way of irrigating your food forest is using drip irrigation, which is a pipe system underground. 12 cm below the soil surface is the most conservative method of irrigation. Why? You probably know how sprinklers are a total waste of water in hot climate. But surprisingly, they are still in use. I see it in Italy all the time, when it's 40 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and they run in the middle of the day. Now imagine you had a drip line and water goes straight to the plants. This way, you're saving 50 to even 90% of water. And drip irrigation can be used in glass houses and enclosed growing system, but be careful if your water has 800 ppm of salt on bare ground, as local salts and carbonates accumulate around plants. So, to overcome this in orchards, the drips fall into a vertical pipe which let water pool at root level rather than evaporate to the air. I hope you got value so far. If you want to learn more about permaculture strategies in different climates, join our online membership community on Discord. You can find everything about the membership plans under the link below. Please note that the prices increase on Monday, so if you're serious about learning, this is the time to act. Moving to dryland gardens, they typically require a lot of water and organic matter. In our previous video, we explored a practical layout for a garden food forest around a desert home. But the question remains, how can we effectively plant in the desert? The first method is alley cropping, which are lanes of trees between perennial and annual garden beds, providing effective shade. Ideally, these trees are palms as they occupy minimal ground space while offering ample shade. The mulch from these alley crops helps build soil and reduce evaporation. You can also use sunken garden beds, which allow water to wick downward into the planting area, while paths are raised. And raised beds heat up from the air, whereas sunken beds stay cool due to the deeper surrounding soils. You can also line sunken beds with plastic or seal them naturally to catch and retain all irrigation water. In sunken beds, you can grow beets, turnips, lettuce, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, celery, onions, carrots, and radishes can also thrive in well-drained sunken beds or well-mulched raised beds. If you decide to use raised beds because of the salt on the soil surface, make sure to provide shade for the raised plants using wood trellises, vines, or trees to block the midday sun and allow the milder morning light. In these beds, peas and fava beans are ideal for the cool season, while tepary beans, along with tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers, squash, melons, and globe artichokes can be planted in the warm season. In the cool arbors, strawberries, mint, blackcurrants, gooseberries, and soft herbs will thrive in deep mulch for water retention. You can plant root crops in deep boxes filled with mulch. You can plant potatoes, yam beans, jicama, sweet potatoes, and Jerusalem artichokes in them. You can also create circle gardens around the mulch hole where you can grow tomatoes, peppers, beans, and other vegetables. You can also plant vegetables in broad, flat bays for easier irrigation or surplus water from swales. Trellises in the garden and around the home provide not only shade but also vertical growing space. These trellises can be made from trees like mulberries, with grapevines climbing them, or they can be permanent constructed shade structures. In terms of garden irrigation, you can use unglazed clay pots, known as OLLAS pots, and bury them partially in the soil so they can gradually release water to the soil. Covered with a lid and insulated by the surrounding earth, these pots minimize water evaporation from the top. What's great about them is they prevent overwatering by halting water release once they balance with the soil's moisture levels. Additionally, OLLAS pots can be sealed on top and linked in series to an elevated water barrel via piping, and the water pressure could maintain the OLLAS pot's water levels for an extended period without active intervention. OLLAS pots can be positioned at the center of the circle gardens, and another way to irrigate is to use inverted bottles with leaky tops. You can also use micropore and seepage lines used for valuable crops, and they have slits which open under slight pressure, and they can be laid below the root level or at surface for shallow roots. Well, this concludes today's video. I hope you found value. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already to not miss any future content. Thanks so much for watching.